What if the biggest thing holding you back is not your lack of talent, not your lack of money, not even your lack of opportunity? What if it's the simple fact that you've stopped paying attention to your own life? Think about that for a moment. You wake up at the same time. You reach for the same phone. You scroll through the same messages. You rush through the same routine. You deal with the same people. You think the same thoughts. You make the same excuses. Then before you know it, another day has disappeared. Another week is gone. Another month has quietly slipped away. Nothing terrible happened, but nothing remarkable happened either. That is the danger. Life rarely announces that you're wasting it. It doesn't ring an alarm. It doesn't send you a warning letter. It simply keeps moving while you stay exactly where you are. One day becomes 1 year becomes 10. Then you suddenly wonder where all the time went. Too many people don't lose their dreams because of one giant failure. They lose them because they slowly drift away from them, one ordinary day at a time. Autopilot feels comfortable. That's why it's so dangerous. The hardest prison to escape isn't built with steel bars. It's built with routines you never question, habits you never examine, and beliefs you accepted without realizing they were limiting your future. You may be sitting here today wondering why you don't feel excited anymore, why every Monday feels heavy, why every goal you once cared about now feels distant, why your energy disappears before the day even begins. The answer may not be that you're incapable. The answer may simply be that you've been asleep with your eyes open. You've been living according to momentum instead of intention. There's a huge difference. Momentum carries you wherever yesterday was already taking you. Intention chooses where tomorrow will go. Most people never stop long enough to ask themselves one life-changing question. Am I living the life I chose or the life I accidentally accepted? That's a difficult question because honest answers demand honest action. It's easier to stay busy than to become intentional. Busy people often feel productive. Intentional people actually make progress. Those are not the same thing. Have you ever driven somewhere you've been hundreds of times and suddenly realized you don't even remember the journey? Your hands were on the wheel, your eyes were on the road, but your mind was somewhere else. You arrived without really experiencing the trip. Now imagine doing that with your entire life. Imagine waking up one day at 60 or 70 years old and realizing you've arrived at a destination you never consciously chose. Not because someone forced you, because you never took control of the steering wheel. Autopilot isn't just something that happens while driving. It happens in careers. It happens in relationships. It happens with health. It happens with dreams. It happens with identity. At first, you tell yourself you're only postponing your goals. I'll start next month. I'll take better care of myself after things calm down. I'll learn that new skill later. I'll chase my dream when I have more confidence. Months become years. Confidence never magically arrives. Conditions never become perfect. And someday becomes never. The frightening part is that autopilot feels normal because almost everyone around you is living the same way. People wake up exhausted, complain about work, rush through meals, escape into entertainment, go to sleep, repeat, repeat, repeat. They mistake survival for living. They confuse existing with growing. But deep inside, something keeps whispering that there must be more. Maybe you've heard that whisper. Maybe it speaks late at night when everything becomes quiet. Maybe it appears when you see someone pursuing a meaningful life. Maybe it arrives during moments when you're alone with your thoughts. It asks uncomfortable questions. Is this really who I want to become? What happened to the person I wanted to be? When did I stop believing in myself? Those questions aren't your enemies. They're invitations. Your discomfort isn't proof that something is wrong with you. Sometimes it's proof that something inside you refuses to settle. The problem is that many people silence that inner voice. They drown it with distractions. More scrolling, more television, more excuses, more waiting, anything to avoid facing the truth, because the truth demands responsibility, and responsibility can feel heavy. But here's what most people misunderstand. Responsibility isn't punishment, it's power. The moment you accept responsibility for your direction, you also gain the power to change it. As long as everything is someone else's fault, your future belongs to someone else too. Blame feels satisfying for a moment. Ownership changes lives forever. Imagine two people standing in exactly the same storm. One spends all day complaining about the rain, the other starts building shelter. Both experience the same weather. Only one decided to respond differently. Life isn't always fair. Everyone knows that. Some people begin with advantages, others begin with obstacles, some receive encouragement, others receive criticism, some inherit opportunities, others inherit struggles. You cannot always choose your starting point, but you can choose whether you stay there. That choice belongs to you every single day. There's a story that plays out quietly in neighborhoods all around the world. A person wakes up with dreams bigger than their circumstances. They promise themselves they'll change. They feel motivated. They write down goals. They imagine a better future. For a few days, everything feels possible. Then reality shows up. The alarm clock rings early. Work becomes stressful. Bills arrive. Unexpected problems appear. Energy fades. Slowly, the old habits return. Not because the dream wasn't real, because the system never changed. People often try to build extraordinary lives using ordinary habits. That almost never works. Results don't come from occasional motivation. They come from repeated decisions. Your future is being shaped right now, not by one dramatic moment, by hundreds of tiny choices that seem too small to matter. The choice to read instead of scroll, the choice to walk instead of sit, the choice to finish instead of quit, the choice to tell yourself the truth instead of another comforting excuse. Tiny choices become daily habits. Daily habits become character. Character becomes destiny. This is why the smallest decisions deserve your greatest attention. Most people overestimate what they can accomplish in one day, but they dramatically underestimate what disciplined choices can accomplish over 5 years. A tree doesn't appear overnight, neither does greatness. Everything valuable grows slowly. Strength grows slowly. Wisdom grows slowly. Confidence grows slowly. Financial freedom grows slowly. Trust grows slowly. The problem is that modern life teaches us to expect instant rewards. Press a button, receive a result, order something, receive it tomorrow, post something, wait for approval. We've become impatient with processes that cannot be rushed. Personal growth is one of them. It refuses to obey shortcuts. Every meaningful transformation asks the same price: consistency. There are people who spend years searching for a secret that doesn't exist. The secret isn't hidden, it's ignored. Show up again, learn again, improve again. Keep your promises to yourself again. Eventually, ordinary days create extraordinary lives. But none of this happens while you're asleep on autopilot. Awareness always comes first. You have to notice the patterns before you can change them. You have to recognize the habits before you can replace them. You have to become honest before you become better. Honesty can be uncomfortable. Maybe you've blamed your schedule when the real problem was your priorities. Maybe you've blamed your circumstances when fear was quietly making your decisions. Maybe you've blamed your lack of time while spending hours each week escaping into distractions. These realizations don't make you weak, they make you ready, because growth begins where excuses end. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with rocks every day. At first, you barely notice the weight. Over time, your shoulders ache. Walking becomes harder. Everything feels exhausting. Then someone points out that you've been carrying stones you no longer need. Old regrets, old failures, old opinions from people who stopped believing in you years ago. You forgot you had permission to put them down. Autopilot often keeps us carrying emotional weight we never intended to keep. Old identities, old fears, old stories. You continue telling yourself, I'm just not confident. I'm not lucky. I'm not disciplined. I'm not capable. Be careful with the stories you repeat. Your mind listens. Eventually, repeated thoughts become accepted truths. Accepted truths become behavior. Behavior becomes your reality. If you constantly tell yourself that change is impossible, you'll unconsciously protect that belief. Not because it's true, because familiarity feels safer than uncertainty. Human beings often choose familiar discomfort over unfamiliar possibility. At least the old life is predictable. The new one requires courage. And courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision that something matters more than fear. Every meaningful life reaches a moment where comfort and growth stand in opposite directions. You cannot keep both forever. One will always demand the sacrifice of the other. The people who transform their lives aren't fearless. They're simply tired of watching time disappear. They're tired of making promises they never keep. They're tired of waiting for permission. They're tired of believing that next year will somehow be different without different actions. Maybe you're reaching that point now. Maybe something inside you is saying, enough. Enough drifting, enough settling, enough watching life happen instead of participating in it. That voice deserves your attention because it could become the turning point you've been searching for. The truth is that your future isn't decided by luck. It isn't decided by yesterday. It isn't decided by the opinions of people who don't have to live your life. It's decided by what you repeatedly choose when nobody is watching. The quiet moments matter. The unseen decisions matter. The habits nobody applauds matter. Those are the moments where your future is quietly being written. And once you truly understand that, you begin to realize something extraordinary. You've had more control than you ever believed. You may not control every circumstance, but you always control your response. You always control your next decision. You always control whether today looks exactly like yesterday. That realization changes everything because the moment you stop living on autopilot, you stop handing your future over to chance. And that is where the real journey begins. The moment you decide to take control of your life, something unexpected happens. The world doesn't suddenly become easier. Your problems don't disappear overnight. The doubts don't pack their bags and leave. In fact, the first thing you'll often experience is resistance. Not resistance from the outside, resistance from within. The old version of you will fight to survive. The habits you've repeated for years will pull you back toward comfort. Your mind will whisper, skip today. It will tell you that one missed opportunity doesn't matter. It will convince you that tomorrow is a better day to begin. That voice sounds reasonable. That's what makes it dangerous. The greatest battles in life are rarely loud. They happen quietly inside your own mind, where nobody else can see them. Every morning, you stand at a crossroads. One path leads toward the person you've always been. The other leads toward the person you're capable of becoming. The distance between those two people is not measured in miles. It is measured in choices. Every choice either strengthens your future or strengthens your excuses. There comes a point when you must stop negotiating with the habits that are stealing your potential. Imagine trying to sail across the ocean while keeping one anchor buried in the sand. No matter how powerful the boat is, it cannot move freely because something is still holding it back. Many people live exactly that way. They dream of success while protecting the very habits that prevent it. They want confidence but avoid difficult conversations. They want better health but refuse small daily disciplines. They want financial freedom but never learn new skills. They want peace while feeding constant negativity. They want extraordinary results from ordinary commitment. Life doesn't work that way. Your future responds to what you practice, not what you wish for. This is why discipline becomes one of the greatest forms of self-respect. Most people think discipline is about punishment. It isn't. Discipline is keeping the promises you make to yourself. When you tell yourself you'll wake up early and you do it, you're building trust with yourself. When you promise to finish what you started and you follow through, you're building character. When you choose growth over comfort, you're teaching your mind that your word means something. That inner trust becomes priceless. Because confidence isn't created by positive thinking alone. Confidence grows from evidence. Every promise you keep becomes evidence that you can depend on yourself. And every broken promise quietly teaches your mind the opposite. This is why small victories matter so much. Finishing one chapter, making one healthy meal, saving one extra dollar, reading 10 pages, taking one walk instead of making another excuse. These actions may look insignificant from the outside, but inside they're changing your identity. People often focus too much on changing their circumstances. Real transformation begins by changing identity. Instead of asking, what do I need to achieve? Ask, who do I need to become? Because achievements eventually fade. Identity stays. A person who becomes disciplined doesn't have to force every decision forever. Discipline eventually becomes natural. Just as laziness can become a habit, excellence can become one too. Think about a sculptor standing before a giant block of stone. The masterpiece isn't added, it's revealed. Every careful strike removes what doesn't belong. Your life works in a similar way. You don't necessarily need to become someone completely different. You need to remove the habits, fears, and distractions hiding the best version of yourself. Every unnecessary distraction is another layer covering your potential. Every excuse is another piece of stone left untouched. Every avoided responsibility delays the masterpiece you're capable of creating. The question isn't whether greatness exists within you. The question is whether you're willing to uncover it. One of the greatest traps people fall into is waiting until they feel ready. But readiness is often created through action, not before it. Think about learning to swim. You can read every book about swimming, watch every video, study every technique, but eventually you have to enter the water. Growth begins where theory meets action. Life rewards movement, not perfect movement, consistent movement. Many people stay frozen because they're afraid of making mistakes, but mistakes are often proof that you're finally participating in your own life instead of watching it from the sidelines. Imagine a child learning to walk. Nobody expects perfection. Falling isn't failure, it's part of learning. Yet somewhere along the journey into adulthood, many people begin believing they must avoid every mistake. So they stop trying, they stop risking, they stop growing. Ironically, the fear of failure creates the very life they fear most, a life filled with regret. Failure teaches, regret haunts. One disappears when you learn. The other often stays because you never gave yourself the chance. There was once a worker who spent years performing the exact same tasks every day. Nothing changed. The routine became so familiar that he stopped noticing how unhappy he had become. One evening, while cleaning an old storage room, he found a notebook he had written years earlier. Inside were dreams, places he wanted to visit, skills he wanted to learn, a business idea, books he wanted to write. Goals that once filled him with excitement. He stared at those pages in silence, not because the dreams were impossible, but because he realized he had slowly abandoned them without ever making a conscious decision. No dramatic event had stolen them. Routine had. That realization changed everything. He didn't quit his responsibilities overnight. He didn't make reckless decisions. He simply stopped allowing every day to look exactly like the one before it. He began waking up 1 hour earlier. He learned after work. He saved a little more. He complained a little less. Months passed, then years. The life that once seemed impossible slowly became his reality, not because of one giant breakthrough, because of thousands of quiet decisions nobody applauded. This is how real transformation usually happens. It looks boring before it looks impressive. People celebrate the visible success. Few notice the invisible preparation, the early mornings, the lonely evenings, the repeated practice, the discipline nobody clapped for. Every meaningful achievement has a hidden story. Never compare your beginning to someone else's visible finish. You don't know the invisible years they invested. Comparison has stolen more dreams than failure ever could. Someone will always have more. Someone will always be ahead. Someone will always appear more talented. If your happiness depends on outrunning everyone else, you'll never find peace. Instead, compete with the person you were yesterday. Become a little wiser, a little stronger, a little kinder, a little more disciplined. Small improvements repeated consistently create extraordinary distance over time. The world often celebrates dramatic transformations, but life is usually built quietly, brick by brick, choice by choice, morning by morning. People ask, how do I change my life? The better question is, how do I change today? Because tomorrow is created by enough well-lived todays. Protect your mornings, protect your attention, protect your energy. Not everything deserves access to your mind. Your attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess. Whatever repeatedly captures your attention eventually influences your identity. Spend every day consuming negativity, and eventually your thinking becomes negative. Spend every day learning, creating, and growing, and your perspective begins to expand. Your environment shapes you more than you realize. Look closely at the conversations surrounding your life. Do they inspire possibility or reinforce limitation? Do they encourage responsibility or reward excuses? Do they challenge you to grow or make comfort seem acceptable? Growth requires environments that stretch you. Sometimes that means changing your habits. Sometimes that means changing your schedule. Sometimes that even means changing who you spend the most time with, not because you think you're better than anyone, because your future deserves protection. Imagine planting the strongest seed in unhealthy soil. The seed isn't the problem. The environment is. Many people underestimate the power of environment while overestimating the power of motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Environment quietly shapes behavior every single day. Build an environment that makes good choices easier. Leave the book where you'll see it. Prepare tomorrow the night before. Remove unnecessary distractions. Simplify your routines. Success often depends less on willpower and more on preparation. Preparation reduces unnecessary decisions, and every unnecessary decision drains energy. Protect your energy for what truly matters. Another truth becomes clear as you continue growing. You cannot control every opinion about your life. No matter what you accomplish, someone will misunderstand you. Someone will criticize your decisions. Someone will doubt your dreams. Someone will question your direction. If you spend your life chasing everyone's approval, you'll eventually lose your own. Approval is a moving target. Integrity is not. There is incredible freedom in realizing that you don't need permission to improve your own life. You don't need applause to become disciplined. You don't need recognition to become wiser. You don't need validation to pursue excellence. The strongest foundations are often built long before anyone notices the building. Patience becomes your greatest ally. We live in a world obsessed with speed. But nature still teaches the same lesson. The tallest trees didn't grow in one season. The strongest mountains weren't formed overnight. The deepest rivers carved their paths through persistent movement. Your life deserves that same patience. Don't abandon the process simply because the results aren't immediately visible. Roots grow before branches appear. What feels invisible today may become undeniable tomorrow. There will be days when progress feels painfully slow. Days when you question yourself, days when your efforts seem unnoticed. Keep going anyway. Those are often the days that shape you the most, because perseverance isn't developed when everything feels easy. It's developed when quitting feels tempting. Every difficult season carries hidden lessons. Hardship often introduces strengths that comfort never could. Pressure reveals character. Challenges expose priorities. Obstacles develop resilience. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" try asking, "What is this teaching me?" That single question transforms struggle into education. Eventually, you stop seeing problems as permanent roadblocks. You begin seeing them as training grounds. And something remarkable begins to happen. The person who once avoided discomfort now starts seeking growth. The person who once feared responsibility now welcomes it. The person who once doubted every step now walks with quiet conviction. Not because life became perfect, because they became stronger. Strength changes how you experience life. The storm may remain the same, but the person standing in it is no longer the same person. That is the power of taking control. It doesn't guarantee an easier journey. It creates a stronger traveler. And once you discover that strength inside yourself, something awakens that cannot easily be put back to sleep. You begin realizing that the life you've been waiting for has never been hiding somewhere in the future. It has been waiting for the moment you finally decide to become the person capable of creating it. That moment isn't someday. It's closer than you think. Now comes the moment that separates people who admire change from people who actually create it. This is the moment when inspiration must become action, because no speech, no book, no video, and no conversation can transform your life on its own. Transformation begins the moment you decide that your future is no longer negotiable. There is a quiet truth that many people spend their entire lives avoiding. Time does not pause for uncertainty. It does not wait for confidence. It does not slow down because you are afraid. Every sunrise delivers the same question. What will you do with today? And every sunset records your answer. Whether you realize it or not, you are writing the story of your life every single day, not with words, with decisions. Years from now, you won't remember every ordinary Tuesday. You won't remember every routine morning. But those ordinary days will become the foundation of the extraordinary, or the explanation for why nothing ever changed. That is why today matters so much. Not because today is perfect, because today is real. Tomorrow exists only in your imagination. Yesterday exists only in your memory. Today is the only place where your future can actually be built. Too many people treat time as though they have an endless supply. They spend it carelessly. They postpone conversations that matter. They delay dreams that keep calling their name. They wait to become healthier, kinder, braver, more disciplined. They believe there will always be another opportunity. Sometimes there is. Sometimes there isn't. None of us knows how many mornings remain. That truth is not meant to create fear. It is meant to awaken urgency. Imagine being handed a bank account that receives $86,400 every morning. At midnight, whatever you failed to use disappears forever. You could never save it. You could never recover yesterday's balance. You would become incredibly intentional with every dollar, yet every day life gives you something even more valuable. 86,400 seconds. Once they disappear, they are gone forever. The question isn't whether time is passing. The question is what your time is creating. Your calendar quietly reveals your priorities. Your habits reveal your future. Your choices reveal your character. If you want a different destination, begin by changing the direction of your daily steps. Many people search for one dramatic moment that changes everything. Sometimes life works differently. Sometimes the biggest turning point is almost invisible. It is the quiet decision made in an ordinary room on an ordinary day. The decision that says, I refuse to keep betraying my own potential. No applause follows. No celebration begins. The world continues as if nothing happened. But inside you, everything changes. Because from that moment forward, your actions begin matching your values. That is where real freedom begins. Freedom is not doing whatever feels good in the moment. Freedom is having enough self-control to build a life you won't need to escape from. Think about that. How many people spend years working for weekends they can't fully enjoy because they dread Monday? How many chase distractions because they have forgotten what purpose feels like? How many keep themselves entertained because they no longer know how to feel fulfilled? Pleasure is temporary. Purpose endures. Entertainment fills an evening. Purpose fills a lifetime. You were not created merely to pass the hours. You were created with the ability to grow, to contribute, to learn, to lead, to overcome, and to leave this world stronger than you found it. The greatest reward in life is not becoming richer, it is becoming greater. Greater in patience, greater in wisdom, greater in integrity, greater in courage, because no one can steal the person you become. Money can disappear, positions can change, recognition can fade, but the character you build becomes part of you forever. That is why every difficult season holds hidden value. The obstacle standing before you today may be preparing you for a responsibility you cannot yet see. The disappointment you experience may be teaching resilience. The setback may be creating perspective. The delay may be strengthening your patience. Life has a remarkable way of preparing us before it promotes us. But preparation often feels frustrating because we cannot yet see the destination. Trust the process without becoming passive. Patience is not waiting while doing nothing. Patience is continuing to work with faith even when results are still invisible. There will be moments when nobody notices your effort. Keep going. There will be mornings when motivation refuses to appear. Keep going. There will be evenings when exhaustion tells you that one missed day doesn't matter. Keep going. Because every time you refuse to quit, you are becoming someone who is harder to defeat. Strength is earned through repetition. Courage is earned through repetition. Excellence is earned through repetition. You don't wake up one morning transformed. You wake up one morning and realize that hundreds of disciplined days have quietly transformed you. One day, you'll notice that the things which once seemed impossible have become normal. Waking up early will no longer feel like a struggle. Keeping promises to yourself will become part of your identity. Learning will become a habit instead of a chore. Discipline will feel less like effort and more like freedom. That is the beauty of consistency. It changes not only what you do, it changes who you are. And when your identity changes, your standards change. You stop accepting excuses that once sounded convincing. You stop settling for relationships that constantly drain your spirit. You stop feeding habits that weaken your future. You stop shrinking to fit places you have already outgrown. Growth demands that you leave behind versions of yourself that no longer serve your purpose. Do not fear that process. Welcome it. Every new chapter requires the courage to close the previous one. There is another truth worth remembering. Your transformation is not only about you. Someone is watching your example. Maybe it's your child. Maybe it's your younger sibling. Maybe it's a friend who has almost given up. Maybe it's someone you've never even met. People are inspired less by perfect speeches and more by consistent lives. When they see someone choosing discipline over excuses, hope begins to spread. When they see someone refusing to surrender after repeated setbacks, courage becomes contagious. When they see someone living with purpose, they begin believing that perhaps they can too. Never underestimate the ripple effect of one life lived intentionally. One decision can influence a family. One family can influence a community. One community can influence generations. Greatness often begins quietly. A single decision, a single habit, a single moment of courage. History is filled with people who changed their future because they finally changed themselves. Your story deserves the same opportunity. Stop measuring your potential by your past. The person you were yesterday has already completed their chapter. You are not required to repeat it. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to become wiser than your mistakes. You are allowed to become stronger than your fears. You are allowed to build a future that looks nothing like your past. Never let yesterday become a life sentence. Let it become a lesson. The mirror reflects who you have been. Your decisions determine who you will become. Every morning, you are introduced to possibility again, not because circumstances suddenly become perfect, because choice returns every single day. Choice is one of the greatest gifts you possess. Choose honesty over denial. Choose discipline over comfort. Choose responsibility over blame. Choose learning over pride. Choose persistence over surrender. Choose action over hesitation. These choices may seem ordinary, but repeated often enough, they create extraordinary lives. One day, years from now, you will look back on this season. You will either say, that was the time I finally took control, or you will wonder why you kept waiting. The difference between those two futures is not fate, it is decision. Don't wait until life forces you to change. Don't wait until regret becomes louder than possibility. Don't wait until another year quietly disappears. Begin while your dream is still alive. Begin while your heart still believes something better is possible. Begin while you still have the opportunity to write a different ending. Remember this, you don't need to become the best in the world. You simply need to become the best version of yourself. That journey has no finish line. Every day offers another chance to improve, another chance to serve, another chance to learn, another chance to rise after falling, another chance to prove to yourself that your circumstances do not define your future. Your response does. So when this moment ends and life returns to its normal rhythm, when the screen goes dark, when nobody is reminding you to stay focused, when excuses begin knocking on the door once again, remember what truly matters. Remember that your future is listening to every decision you make. Remember that greatness is rarely loud. It is built in quiet moments of integrity. Remember that every promise you keep to yourself strengthens the person you are becoming. Remember that your life is too valuable to spend drifting through it. You have dreams that deserve effort. You have abilities that deserve development. You have opportunities that deserve courage. You have a future that deserves intention. The steering wheel has been in your hands all along. Take hold of it with confidence. Choose your direction with purpose. Move forward with discipline. Face challenges with courage. Stand back up every single time life knocks you down, because the life you've been hoping for will never be created by accident. It will be created by your daily decisions, by your unwavering commitment, by your willingness to become more than you were yesterday. This is your moment, not next week, not next month, not when everything finally feels comfortable. Now. Walk away from autopilot. Wake up to your own potential. Take ownership of your choices. Protect your time. Honor your values. Build your character. Create your future. And years from now, when you look back at the road you've traveled, you won't simply be proud of what you achieved. You'll be grateful for the day you stopped waiting, stopped drifting, stopped settling, and finally decided to take complete control of your life. That decision can begin today. Make it count.